common sleep problems in general. Is it a myth that you need to wake up a child from a nap so they can sleep at night? No. Yes and no. Depends. Naps should be timed with enough. So we talked a little bit about sleep pressure. So one sleep problem that I was helping a family with is that their child napped, but napped at like 5 in the evening. And then bedtime ended up being midnight, 1 o'clock, because at a typical bedtime, the child wasn't tired. And that's because there wasn't enough sleep pressure. So napping, having good solid naps at a decent time in the day can promote sleep later at night. Yes. But what you need to consider is your total duration. So making sure that if a child is sleeping 2 hours, you need to kind of subtract that from the total sleep they should be getting and make sure that's what they're getting at night. So there is a little bit of making sure it's even across the board, because if you dip into your sleep pressure, it makes it harder for you to fall asleep at night. And if you dip too much into your sleep duration, you're going to run into a child that's waking up too early in the morning, or it maybe has night wakings and their sleep isn't consolidated. If that makes sense. Our most common sleep problems I talked about a little bit already. So the night wakings, waking up too early, bedtime not going well, or delayed onset to sleep. So these can all be issues that we run into for various reasons. And again, our job is kind of to answer the why. And it's hard to say what the why is because it varies for every single kid. But one of the main things that could be popping up is what we call sleep dependencies. And sleep dependencies can be healthy and unhealthy. We all have sleep dependencies. We all have routines. We all have things that we do before sleep. And I think one of the pieces for hitting my teens, I said an energy shot to a 10 just before bedtime. Is that common? Can be, but I'm going to finish this and come back to that if that's okay. So one of the things that pop up with sleep dependencies is the unhealthy ones. And we've got a picture of a bottle there. We've got a picture of an iPad. We've got a picture of food. Sleep dependencies are things that you have to have. Those conditions under which I fall asleep have to be there. And I have a pillow I like, but that's a pretty reasonable sleep dependency because I can take it with me if I go somewhere. Nothing usually happens to it. So it's not like it's going to get lost or it's going to get wrecked or anything like that. So that's fairly healthy sleep dependency. One of the sleep dependencies that my little one had was a soother, which is very common for babies, but also me. So I had to, figure out how to tackle the soother part, which for me was just throwing 20 of them in the crib and then teaching him how to pick them up. And then transferring without me, I just started to use a blanket, would rock him, and then put him down with the blanket, which now smelled like me. And that became his lovey. And he carried that around for a long time, actually, and just found them. He's 4, and he just found his stash of loveys in his closet and pulled them out and hung out with them for a while. So there can be sleep dependencies that interfere with sleep. If a child is used to falling asleep with a parent and then wakes at night and the parent isn't there, they're going to seek out the parent because that's how I fell asleep. So that's where sleep dependencies can be problematic. If you always go to bed with a full stomach, if you always go to bed or to sleep with a bottle, if there's always a TV on, if there's always lights on, if there's certain sounds going on, those conditions need to be replicated in the middle of the night. We all wake up at night. If you caught the dip in the sleep cycles that we showed you, we all wake up at least once or twice in our sleep cycles, but we don't remember because we usually go right back to sleep. But sometimes we don't. And if we don't, and we're seeking out that thing that's missing, we end up with a longer night waking, and that can be problematic. Or if that thing doesn't exist, that can be problematic, meaning we can't have dinner at 4 o'clock in the morning so that we can go back to sleep. That can be problematic. So there's the night wakings can often be directed back to not learning to fall asleep on your own at bedtime. That can often be a problem. Not always, but sometimes. So we usually have to answer the why, and that has a lot to do with sleep dependencies. It's one of the first things that we look at when there are sleep problems. So that might be something for you guys to take away from this, is to kind of really think about what happens in the bedtime routine that isn't there in the middle of the night. And that may be an answer to why there's a problem with night waking, is that thing that's there when I go to sleep isn't there when I wake up. And that can be a problem. Does that make sense? Can anybody think of sleep dependencies? Guided meditation. So that's a sound machine, basically. And sound machines can be healthy dependencies as long as they play at the same volume and the exact same noise throughout. If they vary, if it goes from like ocean to birds to something else through the night, you're likely to wake up with the change in sound, and that can actually cause night waking. So as long as it's the same sound, and it's usually recommended that the noise machine is loud enough that you could hear it outside the bedroom. That way it actually blocks out other noises. Or you can put it outside the bedroom if maybe the child doesn't like it in the room. You can also put it outside the door, but it should be loud enough to cover off any other noises. But those can be healthy sleep dependencies.
And I think too, Candace, to your point of the meditation, if the meditative music, if that works for you and you're staying asleep and you're in that deep sleep and you're feeling rested in the morning, then it might be effective for you too. Those ones. Because I don't know what the meditative music, if they loop or not. Like what that sounds like in Spotify.
That's good.
Yeah. Hilary, did you want to answer that question? The teen energy shot to a 10 just before bed?
We're hitting his teens. My son's energy shot to a 10 just before bedtime. So not currently. Or do you mean now that's happening? Like right before bedtime, his energy goes up. Sometimes that's a second wind, which is a real thing. You can get into what's called a forbidden zone of sleep, which is probably the worst time to put your child to sleep, which would be you've already surpassed their sweet spot of when they're tired and should be going to sleep. You've kind of surpassed that. And now they're into squirrely mode. And you're kind of in that forbidden zone where they're not going to sleep at that point. You almost have to wait it out until you see those sleepy signs happening again. It's possible that's what happens, is that the bedtime was just a little bit off for what he needed.